I'm so excited to be doing this event, both because I think the panel that we have, they're not the usual suspects. I think it's going to be a really fresh view on this issue, and also because Democrats too often treat immigration reform like John Edwards treats his love children. They deny it. They try and cover it up. They don't want to admit it. And that's, you know, it's important that, especially, I mean, given the fact that in 2010, this, along with healthcare and financial reform and cap and trade, are the key issues that you know look to be potentially taken up by Congress. The amount of discussion that has been devoted to immigration reform pales in comparison to what it should be. And I think, you know, this is the reason why it is a priority this year is because, in large part, due to the people on this panel and their colleagues. So I wanted to start off with the basics, asking Andrea to kind of lay out what you see as the fundamentals of comprehensive immigration reform, and what you think to everyone, to the whole panel, what you think has changed from 2007 to make you know, potential passage possible this year.
Ooh, there's a lot to cover there. Well, I think the fundamentals of what people want to see in the bill boils down to three things. I think there's a lot of things that progressives want in there, but ultimately it comes down to, first of all, an earned path to legalization. And when I say an earned path, this is an amnesty. And I think right-wingers always say, you know, these are open border amnesty advocates. And that's not true. No one is talking about pardoning a group of individuals without any sort of penalty. An earned path to legalization means that undocumented immigrants will register with the government, pay a fine, pay taxes, undergo a background check to make sure that they haven't committed any crimes, that they don't pose a danger to national security. And that's, you know, a process of legalization. We're not going to snap our fingers overnight and suddenly have 12 million undocumented immigrants who are now U.S. citizens or living in this country legally. It's going to be a process. I think another thing that we want to see is flexible channels for the legal flow of future immigration. And I think if you look to the 1986 immigration bill, which did legalize a large group of undocumented immigrants, one of the biggest deficiencies was the lack of a mechanism that addressed the future flow of immigration. So I think something that we're definitely looking for in this bill is something that addresses the ebb and flow of the economy, so that when the economy is good and there's a high demand for workers, that we can fill that demand and bring workers in to fill, you know, the economic needs. And I think at the same time, when we have a recession, currently, if you looked at the H-1B visas, they took a long time to fill up. We had all these extra visas. So I think, you know, we need a visa system that's flexible in that sense. And I think the last thing is smart enforcement, and that's another thing where right-wingers are always saying, you know, these are open border advocates. Both from a political standpoint and from a practical standpoint, that's not realistic. We're not open border advocates. I think we recognize the need for smart enforcement at the border. Right now, we have, you know, about 12 million undocumented immigrants in this country. We spend a lot of money trying to deport them. We spend a lot of money chasing busboys and nannies through the desert. And I think once we pass immigration reform and create those legal flows and create a pathway to legalization, we'll start to direct more of those resources at the border to really stopping the flow of the things that pose a threat to this country, and that's drug trafficking and human trafficking, and also terrorism, obviously, is always a concern. And in terms of what has changed, I think a lot has changed in this country, and I think what you saw in 2007 was a bill that started off to the center right and got pulled farther to the right, and we ended up losing our base with that. And I think Representative Luis Gutierrez has given us a very strong foundation to start that debate from a progressive standpoint, and then we can start talking about, you know, how to turn this into a bipartisan issue, which I can talk later about how I think it is. And I think on top of that, we have a very well-coordinated campaign. And that includes increased online capacity. It's called Reform Immigration for America, and you can check out the website, and it's there. There's also this texting system called, you can text Justice, and I actually wrote this down because for anyone who wants to follow the issue, it's Justice 69866, And if you text that, you get updates. And we've been able to generate literally thousands of calls to Congress just in the past few months, and that's without even having an immigration reform bill on the ground. And I think you can see this translating into different efforts. You see the Drop Dobbs campaign, where Latino groups worked with progressive groups and media watchdog groups to really put the pressure on CNN. You saw it in Arizona last weekend with protests against Sheriff Joe Arpaio. For those of you who don't know him, he has very harsh immigration enforcement techniques. He goes into neighborhoods and calls these immigration crime sweeps. Most of his prisoners are Latinos, and he puts them in pink underwear and marches them through the streets of Phoenix. So, you know, about 10,000 to 20,000 people came out to protest him. And I think you're really seeing movement in this issue.
So how about this?